Hello, and welcome to Toxic, the podcast where we talk about pop culture topics to dissect whether or not they are bad for society, either the subject or the person that we're talking about. I am Leah, one half of your media expert and cultural critique team, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Shalina,
Wonderful. Shalina, who are we talking about today?
we're talking about Will and Jada Smith. We're going to put on our cultural critic hats and dive right in, along with the rest of the internet.
Yes, the whole internet is a buzz because do you want me to go through this or do you want to talk about it? How do you want to introduce it?
Oh no, I'll let you cue it up. You always do a fantastic job of.
Well, I don't know if I will this time because I almost feel almost too close to this because I've, loosely followed it for the past few years. But Jada Pinkett-Smith has been in the news recently for remarks she's made about her marriage and her relationship to Tupac, the late rapper. And these are things that actually most of it she's kind of said before. It's of note now because she is preparing to launch a book, or she has launched an autobiography. And to be fair, like A, she's selling, but also B, she did an interview, like an in-depth interview with a couple of news magazines, and snippets are coming out from that. Obviously, part of the way the media works is writers need stories, especially like pop culture writers. They need stories and they want to talk about what's hot and topical and trending so that there'll be more eyeballs and more sales, right? Like more advertising revenue comes from the more people that read things. And so this is very much a topic because this is what people are talking about. So that is the initial setup.
Okay, so Jada's
Anything you
got a
want to
book
add
coming
to?
out,
Yeah,
and
exactly. Jada's got
she is letting a lot of people, namely the whole world, into her marriage by spilling the tea about many aspects of it that some people may think, Jada, why do you keep talking? We don't want to know the ins and outs of your marriage. And also, some people think that by revealing so much, especially some of the, I don't know, the old folk would say dirty laundry,
mm-hmm.
that she is emasculating her husband. I mean, among other things, like this is so layered. There's so much going on.
It
So,
is so layered. Yes.
I mean, I'm sure I say our listeners as if we have 100,000 of them, but one day, um, the people who are interested in pop culture probably know the basics. That one, they have, would you say an open marriage?
I would. I don't know
Untraditional
what they.
marriage.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good PC-ish word for it.
Yeah, an untraditional marriage. And I mean, what? Oh gosh, it's so much. Yeah, let's just start with that. Oh,
Okay.
let's start with the main thing. Do you think it's appropriate for anyone, whether it's a man or a woman, to speak publicly about the ups and downs of their marriage, especially intimate type of details, whether it's open relationships or relationships with other people or the troubles in a marriage?
I mean, I don't, and personally, I find it a little bit toxic too, in the sense that it kind of isn't fair to the other person. However, there might be people who get something out of it, who feel heard or seen or not as strange because they have something similar going on in their own marriage. So I don't necessarily want to judge it for other people, but it's not something I would do prize value or enjoy. I would be very ticked off with my spouse or talking about the intricacies and intimacies of our marriage. I would not like that very much.
Right.
But as we may talk about a little bit later, Will kind of cosigns the talking too much part. So I don't know that it's fair to fault her for that. How about you?
I would agree. I think that one, they're celebrities, and so celebrities are different. Should they be different? I don't know. But um I'm sure she's not releasing things that she hasn't run by him. So
Yeah. And also people are looking for this information from celebrities, right? Like no one, cares that much about someone who they don't know We're not looking for the intricacies of, the mailman's marriage. It's people are interested because they're famous. And so part of that, meaning like, yes, she seems to be divulging a lot of things, but people want a lot of divulgence. Is that a word? People want celebrities to divulge, right? There's an appetite for it.
Yeah, there's an appetite for it. A lot of people are claiming like they've had enough of it, but
The
there's a
numbers,
robust
yeah.
appetite for it. And people, I mean, so clearly that's not true. Like if you're exhausted by all of her revelations, then quit reading it, quit listening to it, quit talking about it, quit engaging in it, quit being entertained by it. And
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so I would say
I was just
that.
gonna say a lot of memes and headlines that's been like the focus. It's just like, shut up already. We're tired of hearing. We're tired of hearing it. But that's not true. The numbers do not bear that out. I don't have like the list of the impressions because they obviously update constantly. But as of last week, the impressions do not indicate that people are anywhere near done talking about it, talking about them. And yeah, but it is a bit self-fulfilling, right? Like now they're really talking about how much talking there is, but it's true that people are still interested. They are titillated by it. And that's something I think we should talk about is the appetite for, unless you had anything else to say about that.
No, I guess I would just say, so I think we're in agreement. If you're random Jim and Jane down the street, all of this talking about the intricacies of your marriage is definitely toxic and not recommended. Will
Right.
and Jada, we'll put them in a different category because they are
Yeah.
feeding celebrity beasts. But then there's other things to consider with all of this. Like some people say that he seems really pained all the time as a as she
Yeah.
talks about this, especially how she often brings up Tupac and how she loved him and he loved her and things of that nature. Then we've got the whole is taking marriage, which traditionally is a sacred covenant between a man and a woman. Well, shoot, don't at me, don't at me. Don't. I didn't mean it that way. But no, I said what I said. Traditionally, it's considered something between a man and a woman. So and that is monogamous and closed off to other people. So
Hmm.
is it I mean, is there even such a thing as an open marriage? You know, is that in of itself something that's toxic and unsustainable? And gosh, there was something else. What else is going on with them? They got a lot going on.
They do have a lot going, but I mean, I would say, I guess, I think anyone at this point would say, whatever people want to do for their own lives, we got to just respect it and not really have that much to say about it. I mean, I guess the reasons and the ways we might have a say is just the way that it impacts society, at large. And I would think that part of that, is it doesn't feel like you're honoring your spouse. We talked about this before on our own. That yeah, just talking about your marriage so openly doesn't feel like you're honoring your spouse, and doesn't really feel like you're bringing dignity to your family and your kids who have to sort of live with the aftermath of these things. And some headlines have indicated that the kids do feel a bit bad for their dad, but they obviously support and love their mother. And I
Mhm.
don't know if those things are true anyway. Um, but it is something to think about, and especially for us normal mortals. Meaning, like, if you take inspiration from Jada, and we're going to talk about some reasons that you very well can and should, it maybe shouldn't be that. It maybe shouldn't be to spread the, like, maybe it should
Uh,
be just to take the route of getting things out in the open and speaking to your spouse, but maybe just keeping it there, just because it does impact other people. So, what were you going to say?
So, oh my goodness. So when I said open, I should have been more specific. I mean, an open relationship, meaning not that you spread all your business, but that it is open sexually and that you are free
Oh
to
yeah,
engage. Yeah. So that's what I mean.
yes.
Is that toxic? Considering that traditionally marriage is a closed kind of event.
Right. No, no, and that is what I meant. I thought you meant, and what I was responding to. I just meant, some of the things that can come out of whether or not it's like we approve or not of it being open, which I personally wouldn't want it. But again, that's what I was saying, is that I don't think that that's really a thing to say. We think is, good or bad for a person, but just like maybe from a societal perspective, we can have an opinion on that. And I would, yeah, just saying that whether or not you have your marriage is open or closed sexually, maybe discussing it at length might be detrimental to the health of that marriage and, the offspring that maybe have come from that marriage. So that's what I meant.
I would totally agree. Okay, so why do we think this is such a lightning rod topic and continues to be
So
for these past couple years? Like what?
yeah, I think it's a lot of societal topics that are really hot right now and very important. And those, namely are topics of women and liberation and self-determination and agency.
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of the headlines and memes and talking points have really centered around, like you said, Will and his image and his manhood. And the truth is, Jada's allowed to speak her truth. Like she's allowed to say what she wants to say. And what is very interesting and pretty telling is that Will backs her up, both in subject matter and just in support, like publicly. He came to the red table a few years ago when all of this sort of exploded. And if you remember, it was revealed that Jada was having, I don't know if you can call it an affair. She
An
was having a dalliance
entanglement.
with an
That's what
entanglement,
they're
what she called
calling
it.
them nowadays, an
That's
entanglement.
what she called it. Yep. A dalliance with a singer named August Alsina. And it was, huge news. And the press and certainly like certain sections of, of sort of vocal men's groups were basically calling her a Jezebel. And then as it
Mm-hmm.
turned out, their marriage was a little bit unconventional. Like
Mm-hmm.
like we said, we don't know if it's open. If that, I don't know what word they would use, but unconventional. And as it later turned out, just recently they both divulged that they've been separated for like 6 or 7 years. So whatever it was, this was between them, right? But in any case, it came out, and she wanted to talk about it on her show at the time, her Facebook show, The Red Table Talk, and Will came on that show. He joined her, and that is where the infamous meme, the crying Will meme, where it looks like he's just trying so hard to control himself and looks so upset. He swears that it wasn't really that dramatic for him, but okay. Um, but yeah, from that he really spoke to her misery and how unhappy she was for so long. He spoke to the fact that I think, did she not want to get married at first? There are just a lot of things that it is clear that actually he made clear, and then she backed up. Really, she just let him kind of talk, that she was a participant in their marriage, but kind of, not a hostage, but kind of going along,
Well,
and
no, a hostage.
mainly serving him. Yeah, mainly serving him and his ego and his career, and his success. So yeah, what did you want to say?
I mean, okay, so I think we should start from the beginning. Meaning, I lived in Hollywood, not Hollywood, but California, Southern California years ago, and this was circa, God, I don't want to date myself, but it was a minute ago, and it was like an open secret in California that they had an open marriage. Like that was known. So this isn't anything new to people who run in those circles or live there. And I'm not sure if their marriage was, I don't know these people if it was always open, but yes, it seemed that they were free to have entanglements um of a variety of nature. Like this hasn't really come out, but also it was kind of word on the street that both of them um are open to sexual relationships with both sexes. Now, that's just a rumor. I don't have any solid proof of that, but that seemed to be kind of like, once again, something that was considered common knowledge. So, the other thing I would, and the reason why I said a hostage is like, yeah, I feel like Will has openly admitted he came, he saw, he conquered. He saw her, he wanted her. She was very young. He was already a big star, and there's a lot more to this story, but I mean, I guess you could fill some of that in, but he loves his wife and pretty much made her marry him. I mean, that's a very condensed version of the story, and that might seem a little dramatic, but I feel like that's pretty much what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you say? Like, I guess you can fill in more details. And I think that she was not ready to get married. She was only 19, 20 years old. She was just, she had a childhood of trauma. She was just coming into her own. And I think she had things that she wanted to accomplish and she wanted to do and she wanted to explore before she settled down. with a, I always teasingly call him a demigod, um, because he's a mastermind and he's brilliant and amazing and multi-talented and multifaceted. And I think he has a very high IQ and high drive. And honestly, these are the things we want in men. We want men to see their wife and say, "You're my wife." Like,
Yeah.
but the thing about it is Jada is also to me like an amazing multifaceted human being. I would call her a goddess. And these are the type of things that happen to you when you kidnap a goddess. And also, let's not forget, and when you don't stay with the wife of your youth, who wants to be in a traditional domesticated relationship. He had that.
Yeah.
He had someone who would have happily served all his needs and raised his children and would have not needed entanglements or dalliances or experiments or exploration or, any of these other things. And the other thing is he's admitted that divorce is just not an option. Again, like he thinks it's a failure. He's also a perfectionist, an idealist. Like he's got a lot of things going on. And once again, not judging because I have some of these issues, but this is what
Yeah.
happens when you try to hold on to people who need and want and yearn to be more free.
Yeah. All true, but and still, even in that, he does support her and whatever. On that episode of the Red Table Talk, they made a joke. They made a joke using the structure of his line, the tagline from Bad Boys, and it ended with like "bad marriage for life." They both kind of said it and laughed about it, and it was funny because I watched that episode and I had compassion for both of them in it, and I understood where they both came from. And then leaving on that note was just like, oh, it was just like the screechy sort of come to a halt note that just like, you almost had me there, but yeah, I can see the crack in the mirror. Like that's maybe not great to sort of saddle yourself to something that you would describe as miserable. It just didn't sound great. But to be very fair, people say that is marriage, right? There's ups and downs. Michelle Obama very famously talks about how she hated uh, former President Obama for a solid 10 years while they were raising kids because he was always gone schmoozing and she was doing the lion's share of the work. And that I think that is a great segue into taking us into what I actually, and you can weigh in to see if you agree, think is the real like crux of the issue is women and agency and autonomy. That's actually what these memes and headlines that have been. I should have prefaced, said before that people have been quite nasty about it, and they're calling her all kinds of names and being pretty horrible to her. And even just like jokes that are like, I don't know if they're funny, like maybe, but there's an underlying meanness to them. Like that why did he bother slapping Chris Rock? Like who would defend this woman? And that's something that we really need to talk about in society. It's like women are worthy of love and defending and all the good things, whether or not they're serving you, whether or not they're serving your needs, whether or not they are serving this sort of societal fantasy that we all share about what marriage is like. People don't like what she has to say, and the reality of sometimes people aren't happy in these traditional sort of setups, and they're attacking her. Basically, they feel that it's an attack on traditional marriage and that lie
And
that women are sold.
patriarchy.
Yeah, and patriarchy, and that lie that women are sold that marriage is beneficial to them solely, like that there is no drawback to it. So I would say that is what we're watching. We're watching her be torn down for having an opinion and voicing it and saying, yeah, I was not happy. And now I'm going to talk about whatever it is I want to talk about.
Right.
So I
And
think,
also
mm-hmm.
telling, like you said, I think we talked about this earlier, like telling the truth of her story because she's been painted as a Jezebel for several years. And, her memoir is letting people know, like, no, this was an agreement. And they've both used that, I don't want to say get out of marriage free card, but they both
Yeah,
have had dalliances. And, it's not like she is necessarily solely the one driving this. and driving this type of untraditional marriage. And I do think, yeah, it's lighting people up because it's shaking their foundation of what marriage in society is. And then of course we didn't even talk about how in the Black community, a lot of people have held them up for years as an example of successful Black love.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so it's, shattering that image. It's like, oh no, is this what successful Black love is? Or oh no, is this what, are we not even doing traditional marriage anymore? If these people with all their money and all their resources and all their beauty and all their love and all their fame can't make it work, what chance is it for the rest of us? So I think there's a
yeah,
lot of that as well.
yeah, definitely. She's, like you said, shattered the illusion for a lot of people. And the other thing that she's shattering that I think we just have to come out and say is that I do think that she's kind of setting the blueprint for a new kind of woman, and that would be an unshameable woman. They want to attach an A to this lady's forehead so badly. Like they just want to call her an adulterer and a bad person and a whore and a Jezebel. And she's just like, I'm going to talk about the things that I find to be true. And whatever labels you have, like those really are on you, like she is an unshameable woman and people do not like that. They like when you can shame women and put them in their place. And women feel like they have to ask permission or really not have an opinion at all. So
I love that.
let's
Well,
hope
that
that,
is
she's,
definitely not toxic, an unshameable
yeah,
woman. In fact, I think that is the very opposite of toxic. I don't know what that word would be, but
yeah, exactly. I really think so. And then really the last thing that I think I want to say about this for now is, and an aspect of it that sort of ties back to society and toxicity would be, someone made the point that if this were gossip, people would not be complaining. It's the fact that she is controlling the narrative, that she is deciding how the story should be shaped, and she's telling you this is her truth.
mm,
So that's, and then actually do have one last little point, but yeah, that's something that I think of the big themes that for me is one of the big ones. Is there anything you want to say about that?
no, I think that's great. I think that's very interesting. I would say, like, to recap on my end,
Mm-hmm.
talking all about your marriage, if you're, an average Joe, toxic. Um, Talking all about your marriage everywhere when you're a celebrity, I don't know if it meets the litmus test of toxic. Having an open relationship, an open marriage, meaning a marriage where you have both agreed that you are allowed entanglements. I am not going to say that's toxic. Um, I even almost might think that that might be something that becomes more common um in the future. I would say though that having an entanglement with someone who, and like you mentioned his name, I think you said his name was August.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently he was fairly young, 19, 20 years old, which, hey, cougar's gonna cougar, but I would say it is toxic to have an entanglement with someone who is your child's friend. And at the
Yeah,
very least, it's messy. So I'm looking at her side eye for that one.
yeah, I'd agree with that.
But I'm not gonna say that,
Yeah.
maybe not toxic, but damn near. How about that?
Okay. And then, yeah, for me, I would say, my toxic sticker for the week doesn't necessarily go to Jada, although for the reasons that you mentioned, like, yeah, we probably shouldn't sleep with our children's friends, um, and maybe keep a few things to ourselves. But I wouldn't give her quite the toxic. Well, maybe have a toxic star. But what where my toxic button goes this week would be, yeah, society in these sort of outdated, well, not even outdated. They never should have been in fashion. These terrible um, tropes and confines they have for women, trying to shame women and trying to silence women. And the last point I wanted to make, and it is quick and kind of, I think, helps illustrate the rest of them, like not having compassion for women. Like we forget, like you said, she was very young when they met. I think they met when she might have been 19 or 20, and then, married a few years after. She was young, and she had a very traumatic upbringing, a life filled with like upheaval, and her family marked by drugs. Just really bad things happened, right? And so she came to Hollywood. She's starting out. She's brand new and sort of wrapped up in this whole, marriage that we all know, that's decades long. And people really come down on her for talking about Tupac as much as she does, and it is, strange that she talks about this person so much. And then I heard someone, and I wish I remembered who, but I follow so many smart people that had such interesting takes, and they pointed out that she was so young. It was probably the most formative relationship that she'd had in her life. They were childhood friends. I should mention that. She and Tupac were met in their and I think in their older teenage years, and both had an interest in acting, and both headed out to Hollywood around the same time. They were best friends. Like, it's a huge part. It's a huge relationship, and people still talk about Tupac. They're always like trying to trot out his hologram. He drops a new album every couple of years, and
Oh my
and there's
goodness.
and movies were made about him recently. Like, no, everyone's obsessed with Tupac, and she actually knew him. Like, are you being fair by just saying like she's obsessed and she's always talking about him? He's a super famous person that she was very connected. I just heard the story about Tupac and Madonna dating, and Madonna's kind of milking that in a way, right? Like, everyone wants to be attached to someone that is that super famous, and not just famous but like infamous, right? Like, he's kind of a legend, and she was there, and he was her best friend. So I think not enough compassion for women also, and remembering that women who are young are impressionable, and they deserve to grow up and have their experiences and tell their truths too. That's really it.
That is such a great point and a beautiful way to wrap this up. So that's our latest episode of Toxic. We want to know what you think in the comments. Should Jada maybe talk a little bit less about her marriage? Are Will and Jada wrong for having an open relationship? An open marriage, not a relationship. I think that's it. Oh, or is society toxic that we lap all of this up and follow celebrities and their lives around? Is that it? Are those the questions we need
That's
answers
it.
to?
Those are, yeah. And anything else that sparked for you, the way people treat women, and